yeah, we on the Sistahship. Come with us, we on the Sistahship. Yeah, we on the Sistahship. Roll with us, we on the Sistahship. Sistahship, we got it. Now come on, let's talk about it. Sistahship, we got it. Now come on, let's talk about it. Sistahship, we got it. Now come on, let's talk about it. Sistahship, we got it. Now come on, let's talk about it. We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with you. We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with you. Substance, sis, we know we on a mission, no games. Help each other get over some things. Real strength, bring change. Cause we've been through the rain. Now it's time to shine like blaze. Let's talk about life skills. We building up the right wills. We rolling out of poverty, love hills. So we become the prodigy of how a sistership could be a really hot commodity. Stand together, reunited, hold hands. Support each other's dreams and our plans. Doing everything we can. Come on. Just to show we understand the power of a friendship, fam. Live life on purpose. Together we learn. Yeah, let's talk. We don't want to see you hurt. And we here for each other. No matter the color, networking. Hey. Yeah, we on a sistership. Come with us. We on a sistership. Yeah, we on a sistership. Go with us. We on a sistership. We're my sisters. We got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with you. We're my sisters. We got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with you. Sistahship, we got it. Now come on, let's talk about it. Let's talk about Sistahship, we got it. Now come on, let's talk about it. Let's talk about Sistahship, we got it. Now come on, let's talk about it. Let's talk about Sistahship, we got it. Now come on, let's talk about it. We on the Sistahship. We on the Sistahship. Cherie Amour, Spicy, and Maya, it is all yours. Welcome.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining into our 2 p.m. show on Sunday. Topic today is loss of love, overcoming the challenges of relationship, losses, and grief. But before we get into that, first, want to introduce my co-host here, Cherise Spade. Hi, Cherise. How are you?
Hi, good afternoon. Happy Sunday. How are you?
Yes, we're all good. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to introduce our guest here today, Maya Yu Allen. And hi, Maya. How are you?
I'm fine. Jane and Cherise, how are you guys?
Fantastic.
We're good. We're excited about today's show. Just a little introduction to Maya. She is the founder of Moving Through Grief and the PAT program, or the PAT project. I'm sorry. Maya is a inspiration to many, specializing in an organic way to where she's effectively making a change to take a place in a person's life. And thank you so much, Maya, for coming on the show and sharing your expertise with us. But I have one question I want to start off with. What does the U stand for? Maya Yu Allen. What is the U for?
Now, Jane, I know before we went live, you said, is there anything you don't want to talk about? But because we're friends.
Okay.
And there cannot be any jokes, okay, after I disclose my middle name. My middle name is Ude, U-D-E, Ude. So Maya Ude, yes.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you, Dad.
Does it have a meaning? Does it have a meaning?
No, not my middle name, but my first name does. I grew up thinking that I was named after Maya Angelou. I mean, that's a big thing. That's to be named after her. But my mom was like, you're not named after her. Your name is Maya. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, my dad, his inspiration was my, meaning his, my, and ya to the world. So Maya. So it's not after, I'm not named after Maya Angelou, which would not have been a bad thing. But to know that I belong to my dad, but he gives me to the world to make a difference. So I'm trying to live up to that.
Wonderful. And I think you're accomplishing that very goal. Honestly, I do. What is the PAT project, Maya? What is that?
Well, the PAT project is something that I came up with in October of last year, in the midst of grieving the loss of my mom. And I was just trying to figure out what ways and what can I do to commemorate her and to always be reminded of her. Well, my mom was one of those who always knew everybody's birthday and anniversary. And if you lost weight, gained weight, she sent you a card. That was not my ministry. I still, to this day, I hate going to the Hallmark section and picking out a birthday card. Because see, I'm the girl who looks at the cost of the card. If the card is like $3.99, you're not getting it. I go to the 99-cent section. That's me. So anyway, yeah. The PAT project in a nutshell is I find needs in people. And that's whether it be my students or strangers that I know and people at church. I write them handwritten cards of just encouragement to uplift, to edify, and to let them know that they are loved, they are seen, and then I hear them. So I just named it the PAT Project. And the good thing about that is it is a program that even the school that I work for has adopted and has given me money to do some different things within that. So it's really been a blessing out of such a tragic thing. Yes. A blessing has been birthed. So that's the PAT Project. I just send handwritten notes of love to people.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. Isn't that, Charisse? Yeah. Really, really nice. And so today's show is a tough subject, grief, loss. And, grief comes in many levels. It can be a loved one. It can be the loss of a relationship, a pet even. So let's talk a little bit about that. Maybe, Charisse, would you mind sharing, why you feel, why you would want to share what you've been through in your life with grief and loss?
Okay, so first of all, I can say, Maya, where have you been all of my life? I'm with you now. People shame therapy or speaking about your issues and your problems, but I've been in therapy consistently for the past 3 years due to trauma from losing my mom, my dad, my grandmother. Like every year somebody was passing away. And I'm also recently divorced. So with my divorce, that triggered a whole series of actions that I didn't realize and emotions that I didn't realize that were suppressed for years. And I was asked to create a timeline of what year and what happened so that I can kind of unpack the stuff. And we realized when you in that exercise that I never addressed things and I always kept busy so that I didn't have to face the reality of it and come to grips and have that healing, because grief and healing, it all takes time. And in this society that we live in, everything is rush, rush, rush and hustle and get it done. But there's no room for us to be able to just sit in that silence and handle the things that we need to handle. So with the recent passing away of my brother in October of last year and the divorce, it's been a 3-year time span where I had to take a time out and emotionally get myself together because it has been a ride, a real ride. Sure. I can see my highest face.
And that's interesting that you say, you needed to take time for yourself. I failed at the beginning to introduce Tiffany Coe, who is the lady in charge of all of our technology and a fantastic human being. But she has mentioned on different shows of learning how to sit still, right, yes. Tiff? Yeah, she talks about that a lot in different aspects.
I actually got that from Tiffany Rowe when we were going through a change and a lot of stuff was going on with the Sistahship and just trying to get everything together. The words were still. So anytime I say still, or sometimes I say on Facebook still or be still, that means that I need to stay still for a second and process. Right. So we use that on the Sistahship as still. So sometimes when something is going on and we're talking to each other and we recognize that one of us is going through something, I usually will go still, or Tiffany Rowe will go still. And that means just calm. And process everything that's going on, because behind what's going on, behind what is happening, there's a message that you need to understand. Right. So that's why we say still.
Right. And Maya, I know reading your bio and then speaking with you personally, along with the counseling that you do, you also are an exercise expert. Is that correct? Or you're a personal trainer?
I am a personal trainer, which is where the moving through grief piece comes in. I think it's important that we move through grief. And even those who are not satisfied with their weight, there is some grieving. That's a part of of why, they're where they are. And you mentioned it could be a loss of a pet. I mean, it could be a loss of a friendship you've had for a certain amount of time. Grieving, like you said, comes in all levels and it looks different to everyone. And I just believe that moving helps. Sitting still and just wallowing in self-pity does not help. It doesn't help when you keep opening that refrigerator and getting that pound cake or the Oreos. It doesn't help. Right. It exacerbates the issue. So when I say moving through grief, and I use my experience as being a personal trainer, I don't mean lifting the kind of weight that I lift, but I do want people to move, get out and walk, breathe fresh air, jog if you can. Sometimes people are so deep into their grief, all they can do is get up and go to the mailbox. That's okay. But it's important that I just encourage and uplift people to move, just to get up and move during that time.
Yeah, because it releases endorphins, right? I mean, the good endorphins. But I wanted to ask you, in the counseling that you do in grief, what is the similarities in different types of losses? Is there one specific similarity that connects all of grief, or like we spoke before, different levels require different types of counseling?
Now, what I've noticed, even what I do for a living, I am a non-licensed social worker and I handle middle school, and I deal with, 2021 is full of trauma and grief. One thing that I see, and it's not anything that's mind-blowing, it is just sadness. It's an overwhelming sadness and pain. And what it does to people is it holds you stuck. You are literally stuck. And I recognize that going through my own trauma. It's like it's paralyzing. Mm-hmm. It's a paralyzing pain and sadness, and people don't know what to do with that. But what we're good at, and I think Sharice might have mentioned this, is we're good at taking that pain, that trauma, putting it into a nice, pretty box and tucking it in the back of our minds and leaving it there. But what happens is, over a period of time, that pretty box comes to the forefront and the bow comes off, the top of that box comes off, and all your mess comes out. Right. And then you really just don't know what to do with that. Now you're in crisis mode. Right. So that's what I'm trying to do, is to really coach people. But it's not a traditional coaching process, because everybody's grief looks different. Mm-hmm. And the journey of that person is different and should be respected. Right. That's the difference between what therapy does and what I do. I coach you. So I see what your particular journey is. I honor that. I respect it. And I follow the lead of the person, but just kind of guide them, just kind of guide them and challenge them to think about some other things along with getting them to move. But that's the commonality between every one of us. It's a paralyzing pain and sadness. And
Right.
it's something I've never experienced before in my entire life.
Wow.
Even at the age that I am, I was just like, wow. Because before this, to be quite honest, I was very smug.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you think of it like, oh, girl, you're going to be fine. Eat that pound cake and Oreos. You're going to be fine.
Yeah.
But what happens is when it hits you, and it's in your face and you're forced to deal with that, what happens is humility happens. And for me, the best way to heal is to serve people.
Yeah.
Because if I stay in my own stuff, I'm not healing. I'm not moving on.
Right.
So I'm choosing joy. I'm choosing happiness. I am choosing outside of me. No more self-serving, no more self-fulfilling, because it's not about me.
Right.
There are other people hurting worse than me that I just need to take my experiences and help them with what they're going through.
Now, are you finding with this pandemic that the grief is coming out in younger people as well? And when I say younger, I'm talking, grammar school. There's a great loss. I see it with my granddaughter. I mean, she does virtual learning, but she's missing out on the playground and going to art class. And I really think that's going to have a profound effect on the kids, long lasting. Do you see that too, that the grieving process of any type of those losses is younger now?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what I'm really seeing is in 2020, when it all kind of hit the fan, right? Us adults, we allowed our kids to hear things like 2020 is going to be better. I mean, 2021 is going to be better. We just cannot wait for 2020 to be done. It'll be better in 2021. And then when 2021 came, and then we had a series of things happening in the media and social media and so on and so forth, it's already hard enough for us adults to process. Can you imagine these babies? Because they are babies. And we do have a very high rate of suicide, not just in high school and in middle school, but now it's reaching elementary school age. Kids talking and using suicide as an escape because it is heavy for everyone. There is no one on my caseload that I contact and reach out with who says, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm thriving through this thing. No one. Everybody is grieving. Not to mention we have, parents who cannot bury their loved ones, due to financial issues. And then, when COVID first happened, it was, you can't even hold a funeral. You couldn't even hold a service. So that was traumatizing in itself, and not being able to be there. We have a lot of students in our school who have parents who are, frontliners. They're doctors and nurses and so on and so forth. And they're worried for them. So it's a mess. It's a mess.
So,
but what this time should do is bring us all together. It shouldn't separate us. Because now we all have something in common.
Yeah. So how do you think not being able to, I know the answer to this because I've buried a lot of people that I love, but not being able to have that closure, how do you suppose that disrupts the course of grieving? So you can't have a viewing, you can't have a funeral, you can't have people around you. Everything's kind of put on hold. And then you say, well, I'm going to have them cremated and I'm going to do a memorial service later. How do you think that interrupts the process of grieving in your
absolutely. It definitely puts a wedge in there.
Yeah.
Because as a society, we have our traditions. You know, people pass away, we have a wake, we have a funeral, so on and so forth. And these are things that we need to, I really don't want to use the word closure, because when it comes to the grieving process, it's not something that you can just close like a book and it's over. It is
Right.
something just ongoing, and we have to learn how to forever process that.
Mhm.
You know, because I don't know anybody who is really in their 80s and 90s who says, yeah, my mom passed away and I'm over it. No, sometimes it's been 40, 50 years and they
Yes.
still have that. So it's about learning how to process that grief and that trauma. But yes, COVID has kind of put a halt on a lot of things that we used to do to help us get through the sadness and to get through the trauma. But one thing I can say is there is peace and acceptance, and that it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's almost like we have to get to a place of acceptance that the person is no longer here, because although there's pain there, over time there is peace. Like Sharice, this is my second marriage and the last. The first one was a test. I always say that. The first one was and next time you have a show on that, we can really get deep in that. That's an interesting one.
Mark that down, Tiff. There's another show title for us. Yeah.
But
Sharice can host that one. Yeah.
Exactly.
And although I was so thankful to be rid of that, it was still tough. It was still grief. It was still hard. But after a period of time, there's peace lying in the acceptance of this is my life right now. And that's anything. Not being satisfied with your job, you know, acceptance sometimes, okay, this is just for a period of time. This is not going to be my forever. You know, that's with anything. We have to learn how to find acceptance in that thing, whatever it may be. So it's something, grief is something you never close. Never.
Right. I was just going to say to Sharice, your pain is so recent, really, and a brother. I just can't imagine, wrapping my head around that kind of thing. How are you holding up? How are you finding your family, your support system? I mean, are you finding the support you need?
So it was very tough because my brother and I were very close. We were 13 months apart. And his death was like September, get a call. He's terminally ill. I became his primary caregiver, and then he passes away. Like his health just declined within 3 weeks. And everything just happened so fast. And with COVID, it completely changed everything. And for someone, I'm in financial services, and I'm gonna back up a little bit. Prior to my divorce, I was teaching textbook. I was teaching what they taught me. But my divorce taught me that I have experience now, and I need to teach from my heart, with passion. Mm-hmm. What mistakes that I make that I can now help women with, so that they don't fall into the trap that I did, which was financial devastation, which led to crisis. So I was coming out of that crisis and then going into another one with my brother. And with the COVID thing, I had to become creative. I had to say, what would my brother really want? And I asked him, and we had the conversation once, and we never had it again for the 3 weeks that he was alive, because I didn't want him to think about him dying, Right. I couldn't understand. I could not even conceptualize the pain that he must have been feeling, knowing this. And he knew before I found out that he wasn't going to be here, So I just wanted to make those days as pleasant as possible. So I celebrated him. We had a birthday party for him, and we had lanterns, and we sent things off into the water, and I had people come in and dance, to his favorite songs and do solos and stuff like that. And I had to have the food catered in individual platters so that there was no touching, serving, and things were covered. Like everything was. So the COVID put stress on top of it, because when he went into hospice, there could only be 2 people for the whole entire day visiting him. Goodness. And then once you go in, and you couldn't leave. So it was like my family was coming. Everybody wanted to see him. I had to sacrifice a few days so that other family members could come in, and it was just really, 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 really hard. But at that point in time, I didn't think about my feelings or my pain or anything. I just went into operation mode, and let's just get this done. But afterwards was when I felt it. And it was like, and it's still like, you know, he's just on a trip, you know, and he's having a nice time, but I can't call him by phone. Like, he's not accessible by phone. And that's the way I've been able to process all of it, because it's just too much to, in my mind, to try to make sense of it, because it just doesn't make any sense. So with him passing away and all the experience that I have, COVID has made things even harder for people. You know, you think you're ready, you know, you have your power of attorney and your will and all of this other stuff. And then now it's like, well, COVID is here. Things are taking 2 weeks more, or 3 weeks more. So that on top of it, you know, so we got to be really, really, as Maya said, move through the grief, you know, not kind of stay stuck in it, but still take that time to process. So thing for me 3 years ago was get out of bed, make your bed every day. And once you make it, don't get back in it. So that's what I do when I get up in the morning. Like, that was a goal for me, and I accomplished that. So I'm going on 4 years now, making my bed every single day and not lying back down. Even if I'm exhausted, I'll sit down, read a book, or just kind of chill out, you know? And then another thing is that you have to find, you don't want to wear your friend out and your close family member. So you have to find that person, whether it's a professional or someone who's dedicated, that will reach in with you every day or every other day or whatever it is to touch base. You have to have that anchor, because if you don't, you'll end up spewing all over your close friends and family, and it's very overwhelming to them. And you know, it's a heavy bag for them to carry. So, and
they're more objective, right? I mean, a stranger is more objective and can see things clearer, I would assume. I mean, I know, because I went to a grief counselor myself, because after my husband died, I puked all over everybody about it. I did. And I could see people were like, I'm done, you know? And I agree.
Not everybody is built for it. It's a heavy cross to bear. And Sharice, I'm glad you brought that up, because when you're going through grief, you tend to think, I'm the victim, me, and I have the right to say whatever I want to say to whomever. But we all hold responsibility to what comes out of our pie hole, even in the midst of grief. And to be cognizant of who you say things to, because we're quick to say, you know, she came over here and she did that. And doesn't she know such and so passed away? And how? Wait a minute. We all hold responsibility to what we say and who we say it to, whether you're grieving or not.
Absolutely.
Right. So Maya, I'm glad you brought that up, because I often wonder, when my husband first died, I felt like I was the one giving support to the people coming to see me. Okay, like I needed the comfort, and I was the comforter. Okay, and honestly, I didn't realize that until way after the fact. But I think, and when I sit back and look at it now, I'm wondering if this is correct, and correct me, please, if I'm wrong. But when someone dies and people don't know what to do, is it that they're looking at their own mortality and going, oh crap, I'm going to die someday too. And maybe I need to be kinder or nicer, or, you know, stop drinking. And, you know, does it hit other people in that way? Because it hits me that way. You know, every time I lose someone close to me, I'm like, I think I want to be a nicer person. You know what I mean? Your own mortality, right? Hits you smack in the face.
Maya, before you answer that question, I know you said not everyone is built for it. And I mean, we're never ready for it, but I'm one of those people who I don't think that I'm built for it, because what happens with me and what Jane said is when you tell me that someone's passed away, you know, I will send my condolences, but I notice that I will run away from it. So I know that you've had death in your family and I want to support, but I'm not that, like, I can't, like, I don't know how to deal with it. So to people, and this is why we always have to think, you know, how do other people deal with it? Some people may say, oh, she's not supportive, but it's not that that person is not being supportive. They might not know how to deal with it themselves. And I know I'm that type of person. So you might tell me, hey, you know, somebody passed away, and I'll say, okay. And I'll say, is there anything that I can do? And then I may not attend the funeral. I may not, because I just don't know how to handle that. So some people take it the wrong way as you not being supportive versus, okay, well, maybe they don't know how to handle that when it comes to grief. So I know that for me, I'm the type of person, when you tell me, I'm like, and I'll run away from the situation, not knowing how to handle it. So I think when it comes to grief, we all need to find that balance. And always I try to put myself in the other person's shoes. How do they feel? Because even though we're going through something as well, when you tell somebody that, how will they react to it? Because you don't know how they're feeling and what their balance is of dealing with grief.
Ooh, that's
it's weird. It's no one's gonna ever get it right. And we've always, every last one of us have been the one to put our foot in our mouths. And I think,
oh my God, yes. I admit it. I do it all the time. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'll share with you guys right quick. My mom was everything. I'm the only child. I don't have any siblings. It's just me. It was me and my mom. When you saw her, you saw me. When you saw me, you saw her. She was everything. She still is everything as far as I'm concerned. Because like Sharice, sometimes I kind of trick myself into thinking she's in Aruba somewhere.
Yes.
I can't call her, you know.
Yeah.
December 8th, 2019, she was fine. And I mean, fine. She had little minor foot surgery, fine. December 9th, she was dead. It was fine on December 8th, December 9th, dead. At the hospital, they had us waiting. I'm like, my mama back there, you know, and I'm thinking at the most, she gonna lose a foot. That's what I'm thinking, you know, when they're just like, you know, and I'll never forget the word. She says, we had to declare her deceased. And I was like, because you try to, I think as moms, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Process it, yeah.
As a mom, you try to prepare for that day you get a phone call. And I think that might be the morbid side in me, but I never really thought about what would I do if something happened to my mom. And I remember just walking off and telling the nurses at the nurses station, somebody better come get me or I'm gonna go off. And they came and they just hugged me. And it's the shock, the punch in the stomach, you not being able to catch your breath and to hear your youngest daughter scream. And you're like, wait, what is happening? And see, my mom knew I don't do dead people. And the running joke between she and I was, if anything happened to her, she gonna sit right here on this couch and she gonna watch Wendy Williams.
I said that to my mother all the time. I said, when you pass away, I'm gonna put you in a rocking chair, and that's how it's gonna be. We're not going underground, and we're not going in no mausoleum. We're
not doing that. And every now and then I'll come by and I'll dust you off, but you're gonna be sitting right here, and you're gonna have. And then we're gonna have reruns of Wendy Williams because she loved Wendy Williams. That's how we roll. And when there is a interruption, because quiet is kept, I thought my mom was my God because she was everything to me, everything. And they were like, well, you know, you need to go look at your mom. And I'm like, my mom knew I don't do dead people. And just to see her was just like, this is real. And this is not fun. And I know police officers talk about when they have to deliver the news of a loved one dying, there is a particular type of scream. There's a holler that you just can't do. And I will never forget the holler of my daughter. I can remember the hollering that I did, that pitch, and the brokenness. It's an unbelievable brokenness. So I called my husband and I said, they saying Pat died, because it's still not clicking. And he's like, what? And I'm like, just come to the hospital. And Tiffany, when you talk about not knowing what to say, how to help, how to heal, that's my husband. So when he comes and he's just trying to figure things out, and the first thing he said to me was, you need to call a funeral home. And I said, what? Wait. What did you just tell me?
Yeah.
He said yes. And I'm like, and I said, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to do anything. And this is the thing. I think as humans, we all feel like Tiffany. That's not just a Tiffany thing. We all feel that way. We don't know what to do, but we also feel like we have to fill up that space of silence. Right. And sometimes the best thing you can do is to be present, but be silent. Because 9 times out of 10, you're going to put your foot in your mouth. And now, Sharice, you tell me what your experience was. But I know for me, I hated saying the following. And I did an Instagram post about this. My condolences. I hated hearing that over a period of time, because I'm like, spell condolence. You don't even know how to spell that. And you don't even know what condolences mean. Oh, okay. And the second one was, I'm sorry. Well, why did you kill her? Did you kill her?
Oh my gosh.
What are you
sorry for?
Right, and then the last one, the biggest one that was a pet peeve for me is, what can I do? And I heard that one so much, Maya, what can I do? Until I started saying, bring her back. Bring her back. And normally when I said that, they would clutch their pearls and they back off. Because really all I needed at that time was just silence. Yeah. I needed to catch up with recent events. It was too much. She is pretty much, my mom's death was one of the closest to me. And I'm 46. I think I'm 45. Closest. I don't know. I'm not, and I know the older we get, the more funerals we go to, less weddings. I get it now. But Tiffany, don't be afraid to be around the person. Just allow them to tell you what they need, because the questioning is like, do you need this? Do you need that? I don't need, listen, I don't even know what I need. Number one.
You don't know what you need.
Exactly. Don't know what I need. And over a period of time, I had just friends, because my mom gifted me her home. And literally, so when I came home, her dishwasher was running. She had cleaned everything. This house was clean. And people was coming over. They just started picking up a broom and sweeping. They weren't sweeping up nothing because my mother had already cleaned the house. They were just kind of moving things and getting things in order. They would cook, wouldn't even speak, just allowing me to be. We want to be busy and help fit so quickly. And just understand, it's out of love. It's out of love. And a lot of people just don't know what to do. And sometimes nothing is best. And that's the reason why when I help coach people, I just follow their lead until they say something like, Maya, I'm thinking about going to the bank and robbing it. Then I have to step in.
Yeah. Hurting others or hurting yourself, that's where we draw the line.
Yeah.
And to that point, Sharice, I never tell them no. I always say, well, let's think about that. You know,
what's going on, like
what's the consequences beyond that? I mean, because first of all, you all going to split this money with me, right?
Exactly.
That's number one. We ain't getting too far. Just it's such a time, and it's a time that as humans we could never get used to. But I encourage people, you know, be around people. They'll let you know what they want, but then we already know ourselves if that's something that we can even deal with, you know. But it's okay. A simple text is okay. A simple phone
just
call.
checking in. How you doing?
But you know, for me, it's not backing. For me, it's not backing off. It is, I'm there if you need me. So most of the times I will say I'm there if you need me, and then I will back down. Now, if you call me and reach out to me and say, hey, can you do this for me? Then I will do it. But I don't, like you said, the condolences, the sorry for your Lord, that drives me insane. Like, what? And I mean, I've never had a really, really close death, but I know I would be like, what can you do?
Well, yeah, I love this topic because one of my brother's friends actually flew in from Vegas, and she was only going to stay for a certain amount of time, but she extended her stay, and she came to my house and she cooked. She made sure things were in order. She was like, you didn't eat anything. I'm making something, you know, would you like, you know, I made you some tea. And if you need me, I'm in the room making calls. Just kind of being there, but not like being there, you know,
not being in your face, but
right,
being
was a huge help. And you know, she had to leave, and then for the funeral, the celebration, the birthday party, you know, I had another friend here, and then my aunt, my only aunt who could make it, she just recently passed away.
Oh geez, I'm sorry.
And it was funny because I remember sitting on the couch, right? It was like 1 o'clock in the morning the next day after my brother's service. And my friend goes into the kitchen. She's like, the carpet is wet. And I'm like, what? And we open the door and all of this water comes pouring out. Now, let me mind you, I've been wanting to get my floors done for like a year. I had the stuff. I just never called the guys to come and do it. So my hot water heater went. So I'm sitting on the edge of the couch and I'm just staring, like, I'm just like with this blank stare. And they're like, are you all right? I'm like, I'm fine. They're like, are you sure you're not saying anything? I'm like, I have nothing there's just nothing to say.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know who to call right now. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. There's water all over the place. Like, I'm just trying to, we just had this service. Like, what do you do? And like Maya said, the best thing was not to say anything. Because at that moment, I really felt like I was going to blow a gasket.
Yeah.
And it wasn't anybody's fault. You know, it was just like, it was just too much. Like at this point now, it's just too much. It's just too much.
Right.
But in that silence, I heard my brother saying, get it done. You know, stop procrastinating, get it done. And I made 3 phone calls. I called the fire department so I could turn the gas off. And I called the guys, and like within 2 days, the floors were done. But he was just about like, get it done, throw it away, say goodbye, you know, stop holding on to stuff. And that was his mantra and his personality. And I was like, all right, I hear you. I'm just going to get it done. But they couldn't believe that I was just so quiet in that space and in that time. But sometimes you just got to take it down. And to Tiffany's point, I let people know I love you, but I don't do funerals because of my trauma. I don't do funerals, and I'm going to check in on you and make sure that you're okay. If you need, if you think they need money, send money. If you think they need a baked ziti, send a baked ziti, flowers, whatever it is. Don't ask them what they need. Just send it. And I'm just upfront and just do it, because I already know within myself, it brings back a whole bunch of different feelings that I didn't process. So over the years, I just don't attend funerals. And people probably like, oh, she didn't come, or she's this, she's that. Like, they don't get it. They don't understand that you might be going through something internally that has nothing to do with them, you know, and they shouldn't take it personal, but it is what it is. And I've learned to just be upfront, you know, and even for my aunt's funeral, I was like, I'm not able to make it. I just did my brother, you know. It's just too much. And my cousins are like, no, I love you, I understand. I said, but guess what? I'm gonna check on you every other day and make sure you're good. Because in 2 weeks, nobody's gonna be around. So like, you got flooded with all these calls, cards, all kind of cookies and stuff. And then 2-3 weeks later, everybody's back to normal life and they forget that it ever happened.
Right.
So you still need that contact, be that person, like just checking in and see how you hold it up. And they really, really, really appreciate that. I know I do.
Yeah, I could tell you when my husband passed away and we were in the limo on the way to the cemetery, I said to my sons, look out the window. Do you see what's going on out there? And they're like, yeah, people are going to work. And I'm like, right. Life is going forward. We are stuck right now, but tomorrow at this time, we are going to be a part of that. And I want to bring this up because I did a little research and I found this to be true in my own experiences of loss and grief. I find our society puts a limitation on grief. So think about it this way. I've always worked for big corporations. So you get a job, you go to HR, you get the handbook, and they go, okay, just take a look at it. And when you turn to death in the little handbook, so you get 5 days off for a mother and father, get 5 days off for a spouse, get 3 days off for a sibling. What the hell is that? How do you put a time limit on a company saying you get that many days paid off for a mom and dad that have raised you and brought you through some of the best and worst times of your life? My point is, after doing some research on grief, because I started a widows group in my county because I couldn't find any place to go to grieve safely in a group, I realized that our society is one of the few in the world that does not embrace grief. Okay. Think about it. The Wailing Wall. People over, in other countries, they openly yell and scream and cry. We don't do that. When we see someone do that, we're like, you don't stop crying. Please don't cry. How many times did I hear that? And I'm like, what? I want to cry. I want to scream. I just lost my husband. Are you kidding? And Maya, I would like you to kind of comment on that, because I find that to be so frustrating in our society that, is it that people are uncomfortable with grief, death? Is it to do with death instead of grief? Is it because, we want to push it through real quick and we're not allowing people to have that luxury of grieving? What is the ideology behind that, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Maya, before you answer that question, let me just acknowledge the chat room. There's the chat
room.
Oh,
okay.
Full today, and we have John in the chat room who says that Jane, you've been a big help to him in terms of grief. Oh. Okay, you have Trish, who's in the chat room as well, and she says, wow, this is so real. I heard that scream many of times. It is a scream that is unreal. So she was addressing that to Maya. You have Mama C, she's in the chat room, and of course she's talking and hosting the chat room. And you have Joan, she's in the chat room, and they are saying that this is an amazing conversation. This is something that people usually do not talk about. So before you answer that question, I just wanted to acknowledge our chat room and say thank you for tuning into the Sistahship. And we will continue this topic. If you have any questions for any of the hosts that are here, just put them in the chat room. I'm here reading the comments, and as we go along, I'll try to get some of your questions into the hosts that are here.
Okay, good. So Maya, again, what's your take on corporations and businesses only giving us so many days to do that process when it's actually a lifetime process?
Well, I mean, Jane, let's just keep it 100 here. Companies are in existence to make money. And when you are not at work, you're not making them any money. Okay? They're not in business to care. A lot of them, I won't say all of them, but they're not You don't see the CEO of X, Y, and Z corporation coming down and saying, Sharice, what do you need? How much time do you think you need? Okay, I know the handbook says 5 days, we can extend that, or you let us know what you need. No, that taps into their bottom line. Let's be very clear. I am blessed in that the school I work for, my boss completely shut my laptop down. When I opened it, it wouldn't even come on.
Oh,
Because
wow.
I felt like working would help me, because I went through a tailspin of, okay, Maya, you have to serve others, even in your grief. Serve here. I was buying food for the homeless. I was buying food for the apartment complex I used to live at. I was buying food for my barbershop, cleaning the barbershop. When God was saying, sit down and grieve the loss of your mom.
Be still.
All I want you to do. Sit down. That's all good, because a lot of people think that works is what we need to do. It has nothing to do with works or religion. Let's be very clear here. Sit down and grieve. Be still. Because really, when I'm moving, I'm trying to ignore the feeling.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm about to blow up any day.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
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 But I was blessed enough, and I took the whole month of January. Okay, she passed December 9th. I didn't go back to work until the middle of January that next year. And even then, my boss was like, you need more time. I need you to come into the office, since I do work virtual. And she was like, I need to see your face. And she was like, you need more time. And I'm like, no, I need to work. But it is unfortunate, because what happens is, what companies don't understand is, if you just give them the 5 days max, and of course, it takes some people a lot longer to process and to deal, it's going to affect their bottom line, because the person that's working for them cannot produce 100%, because their mind is somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah.
And the blessing of COVID, because we don't ever think there's a blessing in COVID, but the blessing is, although my mother was fortunate enough to pass right before COVID hit, we don't have to so much worry about funerals a week out. We get more time to kind of get finances together. We don't have to entertain, for lack of a better word, hundreds of people. It's a max 30 people, depending on your state. It is. We are now embracing more memorials, and as Sharice has pointed out, celebrations of life. So we are doing things differently, because I just could not see my mother in a casket. That was just having to have the wake, and the traditionally speaking, that was not going to work for me.
Right.
So for everyone who's lost a loved one during COVID, and although it is a hard time, I challenge you to think of it a little bit differently. Thank God you didn't have to plan a full out funeral with the doves and the this and the that and the pomp and circumstances. You got to get to the meat of it, deal with it, because like Sharice stated, I remember doing the speech at my mother's memorial, and I remember holding onto the podium saying, I don't want to stop talking, because when I'm done, I will never see you guys again. It's going to be over. And I don't know what my life is going to look like alone.
Right. Right. Yes.
So yes, to these corporations, I challenge corporations to give a little bit more time. And sometimes that time should be flexible, because you can't get it all out in 5 days.
No.
Five consecutive days.
Right.
I might be fine this week, but what about, my boss still asks me, and it's been a year and a half, just about, how are you doing? He always checks in.
Yeah.
So it's about money. It's about money. If every corporation took into account your emotions, they wouldn't make any money.
That's true.
Right.
So true.
And I get it that it's about the bottom line for sure. But I also, had people that would come over and visit me 2 weeks later and say, I had one gentleman come over and say, so when do you think you're going to be over this? I threw him out of my house. I did. I mean, I did apologize like a year later, but I was furious. I'll never get over it. You know, this was a great loss, a sudden loss. My husband was young. I came home and found him dead on the floor. I mean, how do you process that after 33 years of marriage? You don't, you know. But that brings me back to the point of, people that just process death themselves, or want it around them, or be able to, I really do believe a lot of it, again, going back to checking out their own mortality. Like, oh my God, I am going to die someday. It's absurd to think you're not, okay, because we all are. But I do think it brings you a little closer to that thought of possibly, it could be you.
I want to add to that, Jane, the widowship, going through a divorce. I call it virtual widowship, because being a virtual widow, because you have this relationship, and it could be any type of relationship, to be honest with you. You have this relationship and you have this commitment, and now it's all broken, and your life is different. So how do you, and it's gone, the person is gone, how do you move forward now? You have this new life, you got to change your mindset, and you're still supposed to keep up with what you're doing without missing a beat or a step. And people on the outside looking in, can be very cruel.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, you knew this was going to happen, or you should have known, and all of this other stuff. But you don't know how you're going to feel until you're in it.
You mourn the marriage, the loss of the marriage, just like you mourn a death, is what you're saying, right?
Yes, so because that person, technically, if you don't have children together, you're never going to see them again, to be honest.
Right.
And they're not your friend anymore. So it's like, even if it was for a good reason, you still got to go through the process of, this is over. Those pictures, those clothes, those outfits, those things that we wore, the special occasions, the holidays come.
And friends.
Friends and family, it's like, what do you do with all of that stuff?
Yeah.
And each person is different. Each case is different. Each person's emotional stability and intelligence is different. So things are handled differently, but you got to go through the whole, you got to go through it all. And
so Sharice, did you split up the friends? Did you find some friends kind of fell to the wayside because of the divorce, or how did you handle that?
Some friends fell to the wayside, but some of them are still, they're friends. But the friends, like when you used to double date or do things as couples and stuff like that, that doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
Because now either you or they have moved on to someone else, or, you're not dating, or whatever the scenario is, but the friendship change. It does change. Whether we want to face it or not, the friendship does change. So it makes it really, really tough. And I know for me, I had to delete a lot of my in-laws off of my page and stuff like that, because I didn't want to see the other stuff coming through.
I was going to ask you, so when you first hear after the divorce that he has met someone, or both of you, I've never been divorced, but my children have. How does that hit you? How does that feel?
For me, he found someone before that was the reason for the divorce.
Okay. Well, okay.
So like, for me, it was like, oh God, very uncomfortable, because, we live in this small town. It's like, I'm at the restaurant, I get up and she's at the table. I'm like, this is crazy. So it's like, when that scenario happens, you really have to work on your mentals, because if your whole, like, I went into crisis mode. I'm going to tell you that, because I was financially devastated, and I would have never thought in a million years that I end up in the position that I was in. And I could talk about it now because it's over. But
Right.
It crushed me. I was embarrassed. I was humiliated. You know, my lifestyle that I was used to is not the same anymore, you know, and it just kind of took everything. And it goes back to what Maya was saying about the humility piece.
Mm-hmm.
And in my silence, I heard that voice, you made him your God. And now you need to do what you're supposed to do because you're more than capable. And I went into service because that's all I could do. So I volunteered everywhere. I went to help people, you know, I helped cook for women's shelter and, you know, everywhere I could volunteer and help, that's what I did. And that gave me a feeling of self-worth, gratitude, servitude, and just gratefulness, overall gratefulness. And in that, I was taken care of, no matter what I was looking for him to do or to come out of the relationship that I previously had. And now looking back on it, I understand why I had to go through what I went through, because my journey now going on with my business is to be able to help women understand what they need to do to protect themselves, whether it's someone passing away, whether it's a divorce, you know, a separation in their relationship, what have you. There's certain things that you need to have in place so that when it happens, you're not in complete devastation, you know.
So Charisse, do you have women come to you that are happily married and saying, look, just in case, what do I need to do X, Y, Z? Do you, oh,
Absolutely.
great. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because you're happily married, but the statistics are 1 out of 2 people by the age of 55 is going to have some type of severe medical issue, right? And I'm not going to go off topic, but medical issues are 90% of bankruptcies, you know, in America, because somebody gets sick and they can't afford, you know, they're not working anymore, so they can't afford all their bills and stuff like that. So things just start piling up. So what do you do to prevent that? So I sit down with them and take a look at what they're doing and make sure, especially if they have a business and if they're entrepreneurs or if he's an entrepreneur, because if you have 2 incomes and everything is based off of those incomes and one is shut down, then what happens? You know? So it's not just about whether you're getting divorced or widowship. If you're happily married too, you need to have things set up properly and in order.
Good point.
And COVID should have taught people that
as
well, you know. And as bad as 2020 might seem, it was a great year for me because there were a lot of aha moments that came, and I was like, oh my gosh, you know, this is like, we really need to be ready, you know. Your emergency
I could tell you, I could tell you through the pandemic, I learned to live on what I need and not what I want. I learned that my wants were not important anymore. It was what I needed to survive. And I learned that through COVID. And I'm an old broad. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to be 68 years old in a couple weeks. So yeah, I'm an old dog here. And I'm like, holy crap. Yeah. So I needed to put my priorities in order. You know, I really, really did. So I agree. The pandemic did, you know, it kind of helped you put things in perspective, you know.
So Charisse, not to go off topic a little bit, but talk about She-Wealth, because I know when this all took place, I always had insurance, but because of lack of financial, I let it lapse. So I didn't have my insurance in order. I didn't have, you know, everything that I needed to have in order. And when COVID hit, I was like, oh, shoot, I need to really get my insurance and everything in place. And it has also taught me that, okay, no matter what happens in life, you need to continue to pay your life insurance because of the things that are happening in life. So it made me sit down and take a look at everything and say, wait a minute, what are the priorities here? Let's get it together. And I'm sure everybody had that aha moment. So I know, you know, I called up Charisse and I was like, yeah, okay. Chase She-Wealth! I'll be out here. screaming real loud. She left. Hey, I need some insurance. You know, we went through that whole process because, you know, COVID made me sit down and say, oh, yeah, no, this is not going to work. And then going forward, it was just so many things that we all needed to get in order. It made us slow down and say, okay, this is what it is. This is family life. This is what we need to do. So, you know, if you don't have insurance, if you don't have, you know, your HIPAA, everything in order with the hospitals, talk about that a little bit. We need to get that straight.
Oh my gosh. Like, so that is, I can't like stress how important it is to have your paperwork in order. So the day I got the call from the hospital that my brother was terminal, the day he was released, like we went over everything, as tough as that was, you know, power of attorneys, financial power of attorney, general power of attorney, like all of that is so important because now with everything, people working remotely, things are kind of shut down. Even with his POA paperwork, we had to make some changes. And even for like bank accounts and stuff like that, well, the courthouse was like, oh, you'll get the form within 10 days. And then the bank is like, we need the original. I'm like, well, they sent me a digital copy. They're like, no, that's not good enough. So you're stuck in this period if you're not prepared of, I need to take care of his final stuff. I don't have the money, or I don't have access to the accounts, or I don't have the passcodes, or I teach my clients that you need to have a binder with all of your information. If you don't have a child or a trusted person that knows your passcodes, you know, knows where you keep your spare key, you know, knows your debit cards and the accounts that you have, like everything needs to be in one spot. Because when you're going through that emotional portion of the grief, you don't want to have to think about that, you know? And if it's done already, it makes it easier. Pick up the binder. Okay, so he or she wanted to have this, and this. So we need to call this funeral home to handle the arrangements. You know, this bank account had, and it's very important to have joint accounts, even if the other person that you put on your account doesn't have access to it right now. But somebody else's name needs to be on your bank accounts. Because once they find out that you passed away, they start locking up stuff. You don't have access, and it makes it a mess. So
wow.
Even with this COVID stuff, with things being delayed and stuff, and it was great because his friends jumped in. He went into hospice. Hospice is $1,000 a day.
Oh my gosh.
I couldn't believe it. And I'm like, what if people don't have the right insurance? And I'm not talking about life insurance, I'm talking about medical insurance.
Right.
What if they don't have all this stuff? What happens? They just sit home to just like kind of wither away. It's very, very scary. So we need to make sure that we have our stuff in order. And even for parents that have children, you know, my daughter 5 years ago went into the hospital, but guess what? She was 21. And they didn't talk to me about anything that was going on with her because I was not her healthcare proxy. So I'm like, we're paying for her medical and she lives with us. How do I know how to treat her when she comes home if I don't know what's going on?
Yeah.
And, you know, it makes it, and until you go through these things, you don't understand why you need them, or I'll get to it later. Well, you're so busy with life and you're so busy with everything that's going on and raising children and taking care of the house, and you reach 55 and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't do anything. And I think that's a big part of why people, when people die and different things happen, they don't know how to respond because it's touching a button in them and it's saying, you didn't take care of your life insurance.
Right.
Do you have enough? And who's your beneficiary? Have you changed it? You know, all these things need to be reviewed every single year. And when it's in order, it makes it much easier for that person who's going to execute in an effective manner without adding extra stress or burden to them.
And that's what I was just going to say to Maya. So in your counseling of people with loss, do you find that's just an added stress on when things are not in order? I mean, do you confront that at all?
Absolutely. Depending on what their journey is, and it's a time and a place to handle that piece because they may not be there. I know for me personally, Jane, I just naturally assumed that my mother had things in order. I just assumed she had no will. So that means I had to learn about being administrator versus executive. I was just like, what and huh? And I'm going through her drawer. I'm still finding stuff of my mother's. Okay. I'm like, Pat, you got this credit card. Thankfully, she didn't have a lot of debt, but I'm just like, you got an old Navy card. And and then stuff coming in through the mail from Macy's. I'm like, what has my mother done? You know, I mean, people work on this house. Thank God I am the only child, and by law, everything comes to me. But I still had to retain a lawyer for debt that I don't know about, that I can't put my eyes on. So that was retaining a lawyer. That's expensive. But by the grace of God, I have an awesome lawyer who is teaching me how to do a lot of the paperwork and stuff myself, so he won't be charged for it. Still transferring everything over from her name on this house to mine, although it becomes, I mean, her car didn't have a car note, but things I have to do with that. And I'll be honest with you and transparent, dealing with the grief and the trauma and the shock and the responsibility and just the pain, the physical pain. Sharice, Jane, even Tiffany, y'all know what I'm talking about. That it's a physical pain. I contemplated suicide. Like I did not, in being a social worker, you think there's these levels of suicide and you leaving a note and you tell people codes. It's none of that. It was, I'm going to do it right. It was very impulsive. And it was just too much. And by being the only child, I could not delegate a lot of work because I had to do it, being the next of kin. My kids, my husband could not even, because they would wind up saying, I need to speak to Maya, you know, and then you find yourself having to repeat the story all over again. And you're like, this is a lot. And you have to, and the thing about it is, and I think Sharice, you said this, it doesn't matter your age. Our kids need to get their affairs in order. I have everything on a jump drive. Every time I change a passcode, I have to go in there and update it, because guess what? You have to be selfless enough to think about when you leave, who you're leaving behind, being able to handle business. I don't even want a memorial. I don't want a funeral. I want my family going on a cruise and everything to be set for them. You mourn in Hawaii. I want you to cry in Hawaii. Pina colada, extra vodka, and tequila. That's what I want you to do. Because all of that, the work, the meat and the potatoes, it really stunts your growth going through the journey. I went through a period of being very angry with my mother, like, how dare you leave? As if she had a part in that. And not, I'm your only kid. You didn't set me up. I don't know where such and so paperwork is. How dare you? And that prolonged the grieving process. But that suicide, that's something that we don't talk about, especially in the Black community. We don't talk about suicide because we think it's a other person situation, and it's not. In 2021, the playing field is leveling, and we are still humans. And I'm so thankful to know that Sharice is now, for me, a resource that I can point people to when it comes about handling your pertinence. We all have to do it. I mean, it will be a lifesaver. I wish my mom had a basket or a briefcase or a folder just with what she wanted. Because my oldest daughter was saying, nah, Mima said she wanted to be cremated. And in my family, we don't do cremations. And I was like, well, when she told you that? And why didn't she tell me? You know, she was like, yeah. And I'm like, but I thought that she was going to sit on the couch. That's what I said. She's sitting on the couch with the coffee.
And they even do that now for final services. My aunt was done like that. She was this regal. She had the lions and everything, and she was sitting up in a throne chair. And it was
Really?
really, my cousin did it
Wow.
really nice.
Wow.
But Maya, you're so right about that anger part, because I was mad like 3 days in with my brother's friend and my daughter, and it got real. I was mad at my parents for leaving me here to take care of all this stuff as the oldest. You know, neither one of my brothers are married. They don't have children. So I'm like, I was livid. I'm like, you guys left me here to deal with all of this mess, and now I got this on my back. I got my own stuff that I need to need to take
grief,
care of.
right?
Plus
Plus
grief.
trying to plow through grief. Yeah.
Yes.
But also, let's be clear, as we had talked before, that it's not only death. Grief is the separation of another human being. And as we had said before, you know, I was never married. However, I was with my children's father for like 13, 14 years. Okay. So although we were separating and, you know, things just weren't working out, when we finally separated, there was that connection that was like,
of course. That loss.
Split.
That loss. Yeah.
Right. That loss was there. So it took me a very long time to find, I was with myself for 7 years by myself, just getting it together, pulling everything together, trying to figure it out, doing, you know, in between, because here I am, I have somebody with me for 14 years, and then all of a sudden, boom, I'm going, you know, okay. And although we were arguing back and forth, and I was like, yeah, whatever, I don't need him or whatever, I didn't realize internally that, boom, there was a split right there. So we have to recognize that we all go through grief in some type of, in some way, in some form, and it may not be death, but you know what the feeling of grief is, because in one part of your life, you either, you know, there was a separation, something. So if you have never experienced death, there is some type of separation, whether it's a separation from your job, a separation from a kid or a family member, because sometimes we have to cut our family off. You know, my family, my mother's had to cut her sister off. There's certain people that you just have to cut off. And that's something else, a whole nother topic that you have to grieve on. So we have to look at that. And like Maya said, it took me a while. I actually went to see a therapist after my, we split, because I was struggling with it and didn't realize why I was struggling with it, but I was struggling with it because we had been together for so long that bond was there. And Stephia, I need to bring up, there were supposed to be 2 other people here with us today.
Yes, thank you,
which
Chip.
co-host, and we also had Miss Hillary, who was supposed to be with us. And Stephia is on her way to a funeral right now as we speak, so that's why she's not on with us, because there was death. So we also spoke before they went to the funeral, because we said, oh my God, when we're supposed to be doing a show, you know, there's death, there's grieving going on, and she has to go here. So I told her, no Sistahship for you. So I kind of haven't been texting or whatever. I said, I'm not texting you. You need to stay focused and still on that. So don't, we got this, because that's what we do here. We cover each other here. So if one can't make it, the other one covers. If one or whatever, and that's how we do it. That's why there's so many of us, so that we can cover each other when something's going on. Miss Hillary, there was a separation. So as we had this show, it was kind of like, because we ended up with 4 people instead of, what do we have, 6 people, because of separation stuff that had happened in between it. So it just kind of hit hard while we were doing it.
Right. So it happens, right? Life happens. It doesn't matter what you're doing or where you're going or what you have planned. You know, my mom used to always say to me, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plan. And you know, I was young, and I'd look at her like she had 3 heads, and I'd be like, yeah, okay, old lady, but oh my God, I so get it now. You know, I get it as I went through my life journey that I'm hoping isn't over too soon. But Maya, I wanted to ask you, doing the work that you do, what do you hope for the future in regard to your journey that you're on? What do you hope to give to the world and accomplish, and, you know, before you're done here? What's your hope?
Well, because I have a servant's heart, I just want to give men, women, children a place and a space to just be free and to deal. I think someone had mentioned, you know, we don't like going to therapy. We don't like seeing a counselor. which was why one of the main reasons why I never wanted to become a licensed therapist, because in our community, we're like a shrink. We don't do those type of things. So I prefer a coach. You know, I just want to provide that space. I really, in a perfect world, Jane, I just want people to recognize, as Tiffany has already mentioned, that no one is exempt from this. We all experience it. And depending on what we're doing in our lives, it can hinder progression. Grief and that pain just means that we've loved, and that's okay. But my prayer is that we learn through having these conversations, we learn how to move through. You will never hear me mention these 3 words, let it go. I will never say those words. That's what you do to an object, a pen. I can throw it, I can let it go. But when you're talking about a loss of a marriage, a loss of a husband, a loss of a friendship, a loss of a job, these are not tangible things. These are just, they're tangible in its own way, but we are human and we have to learn how to work through and move through and love through. We have to love more. And that's all I want to do. I want to change people's response to the loss. And if you are a child of God, you know, and I know I always say, I lost my mom, but I really didn't lose her. I know exactly where she is. And again, that's where the acceptance, there is peace. You begin to understand and feel that peace. You know, I want to also share with the world, Jane and Sharice and Tiffany, that, you know, eventually, for me, speaking to my friends and family and those who I coach, they will remember their loved one day with more love than pain. But it takes time. And for me, I need to find compassion and patience today for my temporary pain to permanent love. I want to teach people how their behavior needs to be in their own way when responding to the loss of a loved one. No, we don't need to lose our minds. These are choices that we make.
That's right.
We don't need to move to suicide. These are choices that we make. We need to take a hold of our emotions. Emotions are not it's something that God gave us. So yes, we can mourn, we can cry, we can be sad, we can be happy, but we're not to allow our emotions to overrule behavior. That's wrong. I'm so angry about not having any money, so I'm going to the bank to rob it. That's not logical thinking.
Right.
Okay. And it's definitely not biblical. And I don't know about you, but I know exactly what God did on the cross for me that day. I know what I was saved from. So I have work to do for people. I'm supposed to give, and I'm not going to stop. And at times there are in days I just don't feel like it, because I keep pictures of my mom everywhere. Right. But I also keep scriptures to remind me who I belong to. I didn't belong to my mom. I was a gift to my mom, but I belong to Christ, period. And I have a job to do. And those times when it's hard, because I still grieve, I still cry. I was just telling my husband, there are some days in the morning when I'm doing my devotion, I can't breathe. I have to literally, Sharice, I know you know what I'm talking about. You too, Jane. I have to hold on to the desk and just breathing and hearing people's story. It's never really happy over and over again. I have to stay grounded in this word, or I too will lose my mind.
That's true. Right.
So I have a responsibility and a requirement. I have to remain grounded so I can know what my role and what my purpose is. My identity is not grounded in the world anymore. That's who I was December 8th, 2019. I was selfish, self-centered. I was a lot of different things. I was mean. December 9th, although very tragic, 2019, it was a blessing. It was a blessing. And I just want to share that along with the piece of movement, of exercise, of movement. We have a job to do. And Sharice, I need to get all of your information.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a lot of clients on my caseload who need that added piece.
Yes.
They need it. Because they don't know about drawing up a will. They don't know about the simple things, being on a joint bank account, getting a life insurance. They just don't know. And my mom didn't know because it wasn't like she had a $3 million life insurance.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I'm like, because I wanted the dubs and I wanted things to happen, but then that's a financial thing. And then maybe another time we need to talk about how these funeral homes take advantage.
If you don't read, I read my brother's paperwork and it said, so if you give them the policy, they take 5% on top of whatever costs and fees they charge. But it's so much disarray, you're not paying attention to that. And I'm like, you can call me up and I can help you decipher what it needs to be done, and that's it.
Hold on, y'all. That's a whole nother topic.
Yes.
We do have that coming up, and we have that coming up on the Sistahship. I promise y'all that is coming up. We actually have someone from a funeral home who has decided to come on with us, and he will be speaking about that type of stuff. So I promise you, we're gonna go into that further. We're actually working that information out soon, and everybody in the group will know when we're having it. If people want to be on that show with us, you can. But we are working on that with actually Trish Womack. So we will be talking about that soon. We got a couple of minutes, but I just wanted to say, for Maya, we grew up with tiny tots. We went from elementary school all the way to high school together. And I remember we have a group called Our Health Matters, and she's, a trainer, and we've been focusing on our weight. And I remember when her mom passed away, and I was kind of still quiet. I reached out to her, but I was quiet, because it was that time where she needed to just be with her family and everything that was going on. So she was in the group. I knew she was there, but giving her time and allowing her to come back when she needed to. And then when I saw, she was moving a little bit more and coming back into the group and forward, I said, hey, this is what it is. And she told me what she needed. And I said, okay, let's do it. And then we went from here, so it was listening to what someone was saying and not always doing, because sometimes you just have to be still. So we've known each other long enough for me to know I needed to be still. It wasn't about me telling you sorry for your loss or your condolence, but when you're ready, I'm here. She knew that I was there. I know she was there. I saw her in the posting in the Our Health Matters group. She's great and fabulous. Like I'm telling you, when it comes to I'm the food, the nutrition, I'll do. The gym, I work out, I'll do whatever, but this is my girl. I go, Maya, what's up?
and let me just say, Tiffany, to everyone who's listening and who's going through tough times, grief, whatever you want to call it, let nobody tell you that your journey is wrong. Because Sharice, Jane, Tiffany, I know you guys can relate, because I know on the 9th that morning, I still went to the gym and people were like, you going to the gym? Your mother just died. Well, I have to keep moving.
Right.
Now, some people need to sit in their bed, and that's fine. But let nobody shame you for how you need to move. 24 hours, I'm going to the gym. And even my trainer was like, why are you here? Well, why are you not training me? And why are you talking? It's time to lift them weights. Let's go. Everybody's journey is different. Everybody deserves to be respected. And Tiffany, I appreciate you for not being the bulldog, but just being the silent little poodle, just kind of checking in, and then you backed up. Your girl can appreciate it. Not many people can appreciate it, but I appreciate it. But just know, I love you guys, and I appreciate you so much. I think that this topic really was a blessing and a benefit to many to come. But Sharice, when we get off this, girl, you need to send me all. I need your social security number, the last birthday. I need it all.
He said, ow, okay.
Oh,
That down south, ow.
Yeah.
Maya, where are you? Maya, where are you?
I'm in Georgia. I'm in Atlanta.
Okay. She's in North Carolina. Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So in closing, are we ready to close, Tiff?
We are.
Okay. I want to thank you, Maya. And if you would like to quickly just give out some information, if anyone wants to get a hold of you for your services, if you want to just quickly give out some info that someone can get in touch with you.
Okay. I am reachable on Instagram. Moving Through Grief, all one word, 2020. That is my Instagram handle where I can be reached. I do post a couple of times about different topics. The next topic we'll be talking about suicide. If people want to reach me on Facebook, Maya Allen, MAYYA ALLEN, you'll see me there. And if anybody needs my phone number, I mean, I'll be more than happy to give that. Just if I owe you money, if I owe you money, don't call. I ain't got it.
You'll have all time.
Thank you, Maya, so much. It was wonderful meeting you, and what all the information you shared was, it's definitely going to touch a lot of people. And Charisse, quickly, you girl, we need to know how to get a hold of you just in case we want to set up our future.
She Wealth on Facebook, She Wealth on Instagram, www.shewealth.net. My telephone numbers on my website and everything.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to quickly say March 26th at 8 p.m. every fourth Friday, Queenager Show with Mama C and Constance Moore. And the subject is going to be understanding and embracing the beauty, benevolence, and benefits of aging with grace and style. And Stefania, we are thinking of you, sending prayers out to you today, and always you are in our thoughts and prayers. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. The subject was wonderful, informative. Thank you, guests, for being here. And everyone have a very good and blessed rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.